Norway is set for a change at the helm. It's after a general election saw the country's current government lose to a coalition of parties formed by the Conservatives and their right-wing allies. A Conservative leader, Erna Solberg, who's eyeing the premier's seat, has hailed the triumph of the right as historic. Lucy Kafanov now explains the poll's result is ultimately echoing a steady trend all across Europe.
2 years ago, Norway suffered the worst massacre since World War II, a brutal assault unleashed against a summer camp for young people, claiming 77 lives. The perpetrator was extreme rightist Anders Breivik, who claimed to have political motivation for his atrocities. At his trial, he said he wanted to punish the ruling Labour Party for its liberal immigration policies and to start a so-called conservative revolution. He was a member of the Progress Party in his youth, before he lost faith in it and in democracy, and adopted the radical anti-Muslim views that underpinned his act of terror. The anti-immigration Progress Party saw support crumble in the aftermath of the attack. But as Norwegians headed to the polls Monday for the first parliamentary election since the tragedy, the tables appeared to have turned, and the Progress Party is poised to enter government for the first time. The party has since softened its radical image and tried to distance itself from Breivik, yet it's campaigned for tougher immigration and asylum policies and wants to reduce the number of immigrants from outside the EU.
In the face of economic uncertainty, voters in some European countries have rallied behind far-right nationalist ideas. A few of the parties that have emerged have grown more popular. Others, much less so, or not at all. Well, since the financial crisis, several EU countries, including major European economies, have seen a substantial rise of populist radical right electoral support. Let's take a closer look. Now, in one of the biggest economies, France, after years of electoral decline, Marine Le Pen led the country's National Front to its best ever results in the election of 2012. Now, some have claimed that xenophobia is still one of the party's trademarks, although she has tried to soften the party's image since the more radical program of the 1990s. Moving on to Austria. The Freedom Party of Austria has focused on anti-immigration, anti-Islam, and Eurosceptic issues. It has even called for a withdrawal from the Eurozone. Now, moving on to the True Finns in Finland, they may share populist rhetoric with other Nordic parties. Its supporters, too, are opposed to the EU and to globalism. Now, the party leader had received the highest number of personal votes for any candidate, and the party has 19% of the seats in parliament. Well, the Movement for a Better Hungary entered parliament for the first time 3 years ago. Now, the group describes itself as a radically patriotic Christian party, but it's described in a local press as neo-fascist. And in Latvia, the far-right National Alliance brings together a coalition of conservatives, ethno-nationalists, and economic liberals. With 14 seats in the legislature, it's the country's fourth largest political party. Now, at the same time, some of the countries which do have notable far-right parties, there is a fairly even split between those that have seen an increase in support and those which haven't. And as you can see right here, support for right-wing movements has gone down. Now, in some ways, the growth of right-wing parties has been cyclical in Europe. Some tend to gain power during economic downturns and fade during periods of growth. But with economic stagnation continuing on the continent, it remains to be seen what will happen to these political groups. Lucy Kafanov, RT, Moscow.
And Johannes Bergh, a senior research fellow at the Institute for Social Research in Oslo, he thinks the Conservative Party's invitation to the right-wing group to form a coalition government could be a rather risky maneuver.
It is a gamble. The Progress Party has never been in government before. They do have radical policies in terms of economic policy, in terms of immigration policy. So it's going to be a difficult few days, Conservative Party, when they're going to negotiate about a governing platform after the election. But we have seen a shift toward the right. Norwegian voters have moved toward the right in several of the last elections in Norway and seem to be doing so in large numbers this year.